And all right, so welcome to Strong City Baltimore's Mini Institute. We are here today to celebrate Civic Engagement Week with some interesting people who are doing great work on the ground in Baltimore to promote participation in the census and our elections. My name's Mike Cross-Barnett. I am Strong City's Communications and Special Projects Coordinator. And I am joined right now by Terry Fisher from the US Census Bureau and some of his colleagues. So Terry, I'm gonna just hand it right over to you, and you can introduce yourself and your team there and let us know what it is that you are working on right now that our folks need to know about in terms of getting a complete count in the 2020 census.
Thank you so much, Michael. Again, my name is Terry Fisher. I'm a partnership specialist with the U.S. Census Bureau, and I'll be joined by my colleagues, Faith Blackburn and David Woods, who are also partnership specialists here in Baltimore City. And primarily, our job is to increase 2020 census education and awareness. We work with amazing organizations like Strong City Baltimore. We work with private business entities. We also work with government entities too. They actually leverage their resources to help us spread the word that the 2020 census is absolutely easy, safe, and important. And so we have an amazing presentation for you today. We hope it's informative, and we hope it'll encourage you to actually participate in the 2020 census if you have not already. I believe, Michael, you'll be sharing our presentation.
That's right. Okay, let me just call it up for you here, Terry.
Thank you.
And then I'll be sharing my screen with everyone so y'all can take a look.
Yes, thank you so much.
Sure thing. All righty.
Awesome. Here we go.
Cool, Terry. So, yeah, take it away. What are we looking at here?
Yeah, so next slide. So the next slide talks about the census. Michael, I wanted to start with this slide because it actually it allows constituents in Baltimore to have a better understanding of the census and why it's so important to us. So without further ado, the 2020 census is a constitutionally mandated count of our nation's people and households. It's constitutionally mandated, which means it's our civic duty and responsibility to participate. Now, it's very important to note that outcomes from the census will be used to do two very distinct and important things. Outcomes from the census will be used to appropriately align congressional representation to constituents here in Baltimore. Outcomes from the census will also be used to equitably, I like to use the term equitably, equitably distribute over $675 billion in federal funding to create and sustain human, social, and public service programs. Next slide, please. The 2020 census is very historic in that we'll actually be introducing new technologies to actually make it easier for constituents in Baltimore City to participate. And constituents should know that they can respond to the 2020 census by accessing our very safe online questionnaire, language-specific dedicated phone lines, and our traditional paper questionnaire. Now, Michael, it's important to note that 64 million households nationwide have actually already responded to the 2020 census. But if for those households that haven't responded, they'll be receiving a paper questionnaire in the mail. And so we're asking them to look out for that, fill it out, and send it back. Next slide, please. The 2020 census questionnaire is actually easy and safe. It should take no longer than 10 minutes per person per household. So if you have 2 people in your household, it should take up to 20 minutes. But 20 minutes is a worthy sacrifice when you consider all of the great benefits that Baltimore will receive over the next 10 years if we all participate in the 2020 census. Our online questionnaire can be accessed via the URL at my2020census.gov. Next slide, please. The online questionnaire is available in English and 12 non-English speaking languages, all listed here. We want the 2020 census to be accessible to every constituent here in Baltimore City, including our immigrant and foreign-born constituents. Next slide, please. And for those constituents here in Baltimore City that don't have access to broadband and that are not necessarily comfortable with going online, we have, again, language-specific dedicated phone lines that can be accessed. The phone lines are available in English and, again, 12 non-English speaking languages, and they're all listed here. Next slide, please. Now, I'm actually going to turn it over to my colleague, Ms. Faith Blackburn, and she's going to talk about all the amazing ways that census data is used for federal funding purposes. Faith, you have the floor.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Mike. So how do we use the census data? We use it for planning and implementing federal programs and services at the state, federal, and local levels. These programs include education, healthcare, transportation, and emergency response. It is also used in planning these services and programs. We distribute more than $675 billion. We also use it for redistricting of congressional districts and for forecasting future transportation needs. Next slide. Additional areas we use census data for is for the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, SNAP, and for Women, Infant, and Children Program, WIC, for pre-K, Head Start, and school lunch program, and for healthcare services such as for hospitals. Next slide. And just to give you an idea of how these funds are distributed, they're distributed through Title I programs, $13 billion, special education program, $11 billion, Head Start program, $8 billion, SNAP program, $69.5 billion, National School Lunch programs, $11 billion. And for Section 8 housing voucher programs, we use $19 billion. Next slide. So the census and confidentiality. In today's climate, we are all concerned about our information. The census is confidential, and that confidentiality is required by law in Title 13 of the U.S. Code. We will never share your personal information with any other government agency. That includes the FBI, CIA, Homeland Security, or ICE. Your responses are confidential for 72 years, and Census Bureau employees take a sworn oath to protect your information. If we disclose any of this information, we are subject to up to 5 years of imprisonment and or up to $250,000 fine. So my colleague David is going to show you just how you can work the census in your neighborhood. David?
Yeah, thank you, Faith. As most of you know, counting everyone living in a community helps community leaders plan for the future. Where there are more people, there are often greater needs. Next slide, please. So counting Baltimore, census tracts are non-traditional geographic lines created by the Census Bureau for the purpose of enumeration. Census tracts are uniquely numbered. The census tract response rates can range from 0 to 100%. Baltimore City's goal for 2020 is to achieve a 73% or more response population rate. So let's talk about how we're going to count Baltimore City. Next slide, please. Thank you. Now, most organizations and communities are curious about how many people in their community or city are responding to the 2020 census. To stay up to date with the 2020 census response, to stay up to date, the 2020 census response rate mapping was created, and we encourage everyone in your community to respond to that and check that out. The U.S. Census Bureau launched an interactive map to help community leaders, the media, and the public track self-response to the 2020 census. The map is pictured here, The map features response rates from households that responded to the 2020 census online, by mail, or by phone. The rest of the households will be counted in person by census takers later on this summer. The map is available at 2020census.gov/response rates. It's upgraded on a daily basis with self-response rates for geographies, including states, counties, census tracts, congressional districts, towns, townships, consolidated cities, incorporated places, tribal areas, and tribal census tracts. You can also share the information on your various social media channels. It's a fun tool, and you can keep up to date with Baltimore. Right now, we're showing the current view of the census tract mapper. Right now, Baltimore City is right at 39.1%. It's self-response rate. That is accurate as of today. Isn't that right, Terry?
Absolutely.
So I'll turn that over to you, Terry.
Thank you so much. Thank you, David. Thank you, Faye. Next slide, please. So in the current public health environment that we're in, the U.S. Census Bureau prioritizes safety. The U.S. Census Bureau is prioritizing the health of the general public and constituents here in Baltimore City. We're actually also prioritizing the health and safety of our employees. And because of this, we've actually postponed our field operations until April 15th. And even at that time, our leadership will assess guidelines provided by public health authorities and will make revisions as needed to ensure that everyone in Baltimore City remains safe. Next slide, please. As you can see here, I've posted our amended 2020 census timeline. And what I'd like for everyone to note is that our self-response window has been extended to August the 14th. And so if someone comes up to you and they say, hey, I haven't completed my census questionnaire, you say, don't worry about it. You have up to August 14th to get that done. And they can actually complete the questionnaire via, again, the online URL at my2020census.gov. They can call into one of the dedicated language-specific dedicated phone lines, or they can mail back their paper questionnaire. Next slide, please. But the point that we want to drive home the most is that the Census Bureau has employed about 2 million people nationwide for this 2020 census initiative. But that's still not enough. We need the organizations, we need the government entities, and we need the people of Baltimore to help ensure that the message is made prominent that the 2020 census is absolutely easy, safe, and important. So we need your assistance. Next slide, please. Because we want to ensure that Baltimore gets the adequate funding that it needs to move forward in progress. And some ways that you can help us spread the word is you can actually help an elderly parent complete the 2020 census form. You can host a virtual town hall meeting. You can actually promote 2020 census messaging via telephone banking or telephone outreach. Place 2020 census messaging, if possible, on your company's website, or just post 2020 census info on your personal social media pages. You can help a friend access the online questionnaire we've been talking about at my2020census.gov. And last but not least, just tell a friend, neighbor, or loved one to complete their 2020 census questionnaire if they have not already. Next slide, please. And to help you do this, the U.S. Census Bureau has a very pronounced outreach materials landing page. And as you can see, the URL is atop the screen there. You can just put into your search engine 2020census.gov/en/partners/outreach-materials.html. We have targeted and very specific messaging. Next slide, please. For almost every ethnic group in the United States. As you can see, there's an example. We have targeted messaging for our Asian American audiences, African American, our Latino, and Spanish speaking audiences, audiences, we have something for almost everybody. And we even have targeted messaging for various social groups also here in the United States. And so, again, we encourage you to go on the outreach materials landing page. We have canned social media content that can also be adapted for your social media pages. And so we can get the word out that the 2020 census is easy, safe, and important. It's easy because for the first time in history, we're allowing constituents to respond in up to 3 ways. It's safe because your responses are protected by the U.S. Constitution. They're protected by law. We don't share identifiable information with other government agencies like the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, the FBI, CIA, or Department of Homeland Security. But it's oh so important. It's so important because census data will be used to align congressional representation to constituents. Our political voice hinges on our participation in the 2020 census, but more equally or more important, census data will be used to equitably distribute over $675 billion, not million, $billion for human, social, and public service programs. We just like to thank you so much, Strong City, Baltimore. We'd like to thank you so much, Michael, for allowing us an opportunity to speak. Our contact information was just listed there. Please reach out to us. We'd love to do virtual town hall meetings with your organizations. If you have questions, please reach out to us and we'll be more than happy to answer your questions. Thank you so much.
Terry, thanks a lot. And thank you also, Faith and David, for that very informative presentation. It's great to get things from the federal level. A little later in this program, we'll be hearing from Austin Davis, the program manager for Baltimore City, for the more local kind of on the ground grassroots aspect of all this. But incredibly important information for Baltimore. We all, I think, now understand the importance of getting a complete count in the 2020 census. So thank you very much. Because we're running a little bit behind, I want to switch right now to our next presentation, which is going to be Eean Logan and Ashiah Parker from No Boundaries Coalition, who are going to be talking to us about some of the great work that they're doing in West Central Baltimore to really build civic participation in what they say are what can be hard to reach or hard to persuade communities. So Eean and Ashiah, if you are there, jump right in and you can have the floor.
Thank you, Michael.
Hi.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ashiah Parker, and I'm the Executive Director of No Boundaries Coalition. Just a little bit about us while Eean gets our slides prepped. We are a resident-led advocacy organization in Central West Baltimore. So that encompasses 7 neighborhoods in 21217. I am presenting today with my illustrious colleague, Eean Logan, the rock star of the group. So we will get started. Over at No Boundaries, we currently focus in 4 areas. We have access to fresh food program, our health and food justice. We have a safety program that was really robust and helping to shape the community's input around the consent decree. And then we had GOTV, which was Get Out to Vote, and we had a youth advocacy arm, which basically does the same work as No Boundaries, but is just empowering young people to advocate on behalf of issues that are important to them. What we've done within the last year, we have combined the GOTV and the youth leadership together, and we now call it civic culture. And Eean can talk a little more about that when he presents, but basically our perspective was that civic culture is every day, all day, when we are campaigning, when politicians are campaigning, and when they are not. It is very important for our residents to be engaged. So I'll start the presentation. As we see, No Boundaries is building power, people power in our communities in 21217. We want to educate, motivate, and activate. And then you will see our programs: Get Out to Vote, Get Out the Count, Block Captains, and Youth Leadership. Let's get counted in 21217. It's not too late. How to build, thank you, Eean. How to build a culture of civic engagement. What we're going to talk about is the pipeline to doing so, especially in neighborhoods that have been historically disinvested in. So first, we engage our residents as volunteers. We help them to shape their self-interest, their goals, and give them motivations for making their communities and neighborhoods better. We then move those volunteers into people who are actively participating in our programming. And from there, we build on that interest and issue more responsibility. So they're still volunteering, but they might be, let's say, a person that helps man or run our stall over in the Avenue Market. We build in leadership skills and training so they can have more responsibility and have the capacity to do so. We have a brand new program called Block Captains that will be kicking off. It should have kicked off, but unfortunately we're all in, right now we're being quarantined. But the Block Captains program would have been fed in through our most loyal and most interested program volunteers. So basically, Block Captains, you would get the proper training and you would be able to represent No Boundaries at your community level, meetings, gatherings, associations, and then you would report back to No Boundaries what's going on so we can keep the coalition structure going and continue to build our volunteer base, our membership, and the like. What's great about Block Captains, we were able to fundraise in a way that the Block Captains are compensated for their time for working with No Boundaries. And then at the end, you would just become a community organizer, an advocate. You would have gotten the skills where you could advocate on behalf of No Boundaries, but also advocate outside of our program or our organization structure to make sure things are getting done. Let's say if it's something that needs to be done in your community, you would know the pipeline of how to get down to City Hall or how to call agencies directly without using our program structure. One thing that is not listed here that I want to list as the executive director, we are also looking for this pipeline to also feed into the organizational structure. So for instance, once people go through Leadership Academy, once they have volunteered and they've gotten skills, those would be the people that I am looking to join our board. Those are also, if people really, really, really have a deep interest and the organization has the ability to do so, those are also the people that we would like to look for future employment as well. Next slide. So who are we shaping our programming and our messaging to? And then we have our partners. So I want to give a quick shout out to our partners who have worked with No Boundaries Coalition. Of course, this list is not all of our partners. These are the partners who have worked really closely with Eean and the civic culture staff. So shout out to Fresh at the Avenue. Look out through your emails. We will be trying to have a mobile operation up and coming in the next 2 weeks or so. The Housing Authority of Baltimore City Public Schools, Elevate, SNAP helps us out with the fresh and making sure that fresh foods are affordable in our communities. Of course, 2020 Census, Maryland, NEO, which is the No Boundaries Youth Organizers, our youth organizing team. OSI, so shout out to Tasmin, and I believe Evan may be on the call. I really appreciate our partnership and making sure that No Boundaries can continue in our mission as we share missions throughout our organizations. So shout out to all of our partnership. So the people that we are really trying to get into our coalition and get into our organization are the hard to persuade demographic. Who is hard to persuade? So over history or over time, marginalized Black, Brown neighborhoods have grown in mistrust from government agencies. And a lot of that mistrust comes from promises that were never materialized, disinvestment, our neighborhoods look terrible. We just have, I could go on forever. We have overarching problems that have not been addressed for decades. And over time, that has grown resentment. So, neighbors don't believe in anything. They don't think it's good to do the census. They don't think it's good to vote. They have become apathetic. But those are the residents that we need, and we need their voices so we can push advocacy forward so we can get the things that have been lacking. No Boundaries, we focus on the residents that live in 21217. Recently, we have done a really good push to kind of expand our boundaries a little, not officially, but we have done work in the surrounding neighborhoods outside of 21217. Eean. Thank you. So just some of the larger ways that you can be engaged with No Boundaries. Every year we have our Jubilee Arts and No Boundaries sponsored block party, which is a huge hit. I hate to keep crying about spilled milk, but this year was going to be huge. We were having a march to the parades. We tend to get 500 to 700 people to attend. We were planning to have at least 300 people march with us and vote. So stay tuned. We are going to reschedule and come up with more innovative ways to make sure everyone is voting and completing their census. All right, also Fresh at the Avenue. Fresh at the Avenue, we have been serving the residents of Central West Baltimore for over 4 years. We have fresh, affordable foods, we have discount programs, and we have services to make sure that everyone is able to have fresh foods in Central West Baltimore. The middle picture is one of our interns. We hired 10 interns last year to learn market operations, to learn safe ways of serving foods, and they received certificates with that. And then the last picture over to my right is No Boundaries Youth Organizers. We are so proud of our young people because they are working hard to have their voice heard in Baltimore. All right, so I'm gonna pass it over to the real guy, Eean Logan, who runs the Civic Culture program. I'm thankful for his leadership. He was able to take over for me when I assumed different duties at No Boundaries. So without further ado, Eean Logan.
Hey everybody. Everybody can hear me? All right, just making sure I was off mute. But I'm about to say I am truly thankful for Ashiah and her leadership at No Boundaries. She brought me on, feels like almost 2 years ago, in kind of the traditional fashion that we're talking about. I started volunteering, and then I started working in the GOTV program, a little bit more responsibility, and I was able to get a part-time and then all the way to full-time. So we really practice what we preach at No Boundaries. We really try to engage folks, sometimes even just on a customer level. As you see, we have a lot of volunteers that come through from just shopping at Fresh at the Avenue, or wanting to work with our young people, or actually wanting to door knock on the GOTV campaign, which is now which is also now encompasses the Get Out the Count campaign. And even to our newest way to get involved is the leadership program, which we are hopefully coining with our third cohort. You can see the 2 pictures of our first cohort, and it's grown. You can see that in literally maybe 6 months. We've grown as folks at the bottom. So we're hoping at our third iteration, with the new name of the Block Captains Boot Camp, because we really want to empower volunteers, residents, folks that are, just interested, that have that motivation to change their communities, and give them all of the tools to actually do that. So this is just the newest way to get involved with No Boundaries and stay engaged, is in our Block Captains Boot Camp, where we really try to get residents the same skills that I had gained working with No Boundaries and through some training through Midwest Academy. We give them those same different skills. The leadership class is taught by John Comar, who used to work with Communities United. So we are really big on giving them the organizing skills. And if you can see, I'm about to say some of these folks either work here now. There's at least one person in the top. He works with us, and a lot of these folks still volunteer. So just wanted to point that out. And so some of the ways that we continue to keep folks engaged is not just by enlisting them to door knock or phone bank, but we also really try to engage residents on what is it that they see and what is it that they want to change. So we really do a lot of listening campaigns. I want to actually not just share this screen, but I wanted you all to see one of our past projects where I shouted out Open Society and Evan, because they were able to help us with one of our really robust listening campaigns. So I just want to take a quick little second and talk about how we engage residents to help with all of our projects. So we were able to hire 10 data fellows and use some of our part-time employees to host a survey in partnership with Open Society Baltimore. This is a little bit about it, but Open Society Baltimore with Black Girls Vote, Baltimore Votes, CASA, Black Leaders Organizing for Change, were able to run the Blueprint for Baltimore project, but we were able to talk to over 5,000 residents about what it is that actually is affecting them and impacting them. And we were able to No Boundaries ourselves with our 10 data fellows get over 900 residents. So this is actually online now. You can actually get on here and see actually what residents thought. Sorry, I'm trying to navigate. But these are just some of the questions that we had. So currently, I think my neighborhood is, and it literally tells you from areas in the city what folks thought. You can see right here, just a quick answer was 52% of respondents thought their neighborhood will be a better place to live in 4 years. So these are the types of things that, just one of the types of things that No Boundaries does. And I want to get back to the presentation, but really letting, wrong thing. Really letting you all know what we do to get out and talk to our community, making sure that folks are promoting. And I guess share is how we promote positivity. You can see we really actually try to engage residents where they are. We put up this little billboard here, get counted, complete your census. Not only did we do the billboard, but we also did a sweepstakes challenge that hopefully you all can see this as well. But this is the campaign. So we actually have it running right now on social media where if you tell us a little bit why you participated in a census, you have an opportunity to win extra cash, up to $200. So those are just some of the things that we do. We always try to make it fun, interesting. We're going to start a campaign soon around gun violence, and we want to know what residents think about it, what they, you know, how they feel about it, how they feel about it affecting their community, and some of the ways that they feel like they can change it. So I'm saying all of these things to say that throughout our leadership class, throughout our youth organizing project, at Fresh at the Avenue, where we do some surveying, we always are listening to our residents, and actually getting them to putting them in a space so they can provide solutions for the things that are affecting them and impacting them on a daily basis. And all the while, we try to make sure that they're earning extra cash, because we know 21217 does have one of the lowest household incomes. So we're always trying to make sure folks have the opportunity to earn while they're learning and participating in their community. So those are just some of the things. And you'll continue to see us on social media. Civic Saturdays is, and I wanted to end with some of the actual activities that we do have up and running right now, where you can kind of get involved to learn a little bit more while we're still in this quarantine space. You can hop on Instagram Live with us on our No Boundaries 21217 page. We go live every first and third Saturdays. Once the quarantine is lifted, we will be back in person. That's where we do our door knocking. That's where we do our phone banking. Also, if you're interested in just volunteering, you can phone bank from home now. I can send you a list. But also check out our website for more information about the upcoming election as well, because as you saw, one of our partners is Baltimore Votes. So I'm sure you got all that information from Tasmin. But if you're in central West Baltimore or greater West Baltimore, No Boundaries can be that community partner for you, to just help you with all of those projects. And I just want to leave it open for any questions if anybody has any.
Eean, thank you so much for that great presentation and for the just incredible work that you guys are doing. I personally appreciate No Boundaries Coalition a lot. I live in 21217 myself, so I see the work you guys do all the time. Awesome. And I want to, unfortunately, because we're running a little bit behind, I'm going to need to move us to the next presentation pretty soon, but I did want to throw a couple of questions at you. And I guess one thing that's like right in my mind when it comes to like talking about this persuasion campaign is, you know, when you're talking to folks in the community, and as Ashiah mentioned earlier, oftentimes folks who like don't necessarily see like, well, how does the census affect me, or how does voting help me? You know, like maybe they've heard a lot of promises. Their lives tend not to change very much. They don't feel that like government is responding to them. But what do you tell people in those situations when they put the question to you, why should I do this? Why should I participate? What do you find is a message that works with folks who have been disenfranchised?
Yeah, I was about to say, I'll jump on it really quick, and if Ashiah, you have any thoughts, you could also add. But I would say it's kind of twofold to me. So if it's a one-on-one conversation and it's me and the person that's asking, I quickly ask them, are they on any type of governmental related resource? It could be something as small as food stamps, WIC. Does your son or daughter go to a Baltimore City public school? Are they in college? Are they getting federal Pell Grants? Or any of those things, you can quickly just direct and say, hey, that's the census is going to help us make sure that Maryland has the adequate amount of funding to make sure that those are well funded. And then I also, if it's like a group of folks, I try to ask, has anyone, the same thing, has anyone used governmental resources before? And I usually try to ask someone who didn't used to participate in like voting census to kind of share their experience. like that's one of the main reasons behind our social media campaign. We actually enlist everyday residents, whether they're ex-felons or they are the most upstanding citizen that has participated in every election. We ask them to share their stories. And usually when you hear a neighbor saying why they completed their census, it also motivates you as well. When you say that guy on my block, okay, I understand. He made a change. He didn't used to participate, and he did, and that's why. Usually, I try to use that as a conduit. Sorry.
And just really quick, because I know you're pressed for time, Mike. But what I try to do, and how I'm trying to lead the organization, is just to keep in the neighborhood. So when I knock on the door, I said, "Hey, I have on my shirt. Do you, hi, I'm Ashiah Parker. I'm from No Boundaries Coalition. Have you heard of us?" And they might say, "Well, I saw the shirt." I'm like, "Do you ever shop in the market? We're the people that sell the fruit." And they're like, "Oh, okay." I say, on top of that, I'm your neighbor. I live 3 blocks over, and I'm here today to talk about voting, census, whatever we're talking about. And then I kind of try to relate, like, hey, I hear you. I live in the neighborhood as well. I raise my children in the neighborhood as well. No Boundaries is fighting hard. We're here. We're here to support you. And then the more and more you do that, and No Boundaries has been doing this over the years, but the more and more that we're able to do that, that's how you build the trust. So at some point, there will be an able to say, you know what, they were right. Those people, they come around all the time. They talk to us. They brought the councilman around. They were able to do. So to get to the short part really quickly, basically the consistency is how organizations and groups can grow that trust and get to the heart of the people who are hard to persuade. The more and more you knock at it, the more and more you work at it and keep your message going, eventually the neighborhoods will know, we trust them. So why don't we get this a chance, especially if we're going to all work together to make our neighborhoods better.
Thanks a lot for that, Ashiah. What I think I'm hearing there is like that the ingredients for making this work are like really good information that people can use about exactly how this kind of participation is affecting them personally in terms of programs they use and resources they need, but then also what you were just saying about personal relationships and being, someone who is trusted and is known in the community. So that's great. Thank you so much for that and for being here today to share what you folks are up to. We'll be sure and have you back. And now I just want to move on to our next presentation, which is, I believe, going to be Austin Davis from the Baltimore Planning Department. Austin is the Census Project Manager, I believe, and the head of the city's Complete Count Committee. So, Austin, if you're with us there, feel free to jump in, and you have the floor.
Great. Hello, I'm Austin Davis. I'm the project manager of the 2020 census in the city of Baltimore. And I think there's been a lot of really good conversation from everyone else before me about the importance of the census, why you should do it, how to get involved. So I think what I'm going to do, rather than belabor the point, is just say what the city has done up to this point, ways that you can get involved in current programs or opportunities that we have for you to spread the word on everything Census 2020. With that, I should point out that the city has begun the census work well over a year ago when our Complete Count Committee was formed in the fall of 2018. And this committee has around 70 organizations in it, such as No Boundaries, for instance. Strong City is a member, but we even have just members of the public, people who are business owners, and we also have many immigrant communities and New American groups represented in this committee. And we've worked together to put together a plan, which we are undertaking right now. I believe it was mentioned during the Census Bureau's time that we are looking for a 73% response rate. This means that we are looking for 73% of the city to respond on their own without having to be followed up by the Census Bureau. That would be both really good for saving money, and it leads us to more accurate data, because as good a job as the Census Bureau does at counting everyone, if they knock on your door and, for instance, you're not there, but they knock on your neighbor's door and your neighbor doesn't really know that much about you, and they might not know that you have an older adult who lives in your house who doesn't leave very often, that can be how a person is lost, and that can be a way that our data is not as accurate. So we want to make sure that everyone responds before you have that knock on your door, and obviously before the August 14th deadline. Now, with COVID-19, there's obviously no ability for us to have gatherings or bringing people together to either assist them with filling out the form or to provide access with, be it a tablet or a computer, as this was the bulk of our plans. However, we are beginning to work on alternative ways of gathering, such as events like this, where there are webinars or online town halls and forums. Additionally, our committee has been meeting every week, and we have begun to update our city's website on all things census so that there can be many resources available for the public to take a look at. For instance, we have decided to put a lot of direct links to the Census Bureau's website. We've put all of the phone numbers in multiple languages on the city website, and we wanted to update with our newest competition, which this month we are having the Be More Census Challenge. This is a social media based challenge where all you have to do is snap a picture of yourself, maybe with your census, letter from the mail, or on the screen where it says, thank you for submitting the 2020 census, or even create a meme or something funny about the importance of completing the census. Tag the Department of Planning at BaltPlan or Baltimore Planning, and tag a few friends, and then we will pick the posts that have the most likes and give the winners a $75 grocery gift card so that you can have groceries delivered either through a service like Amazon Prime or Peapod or your local grocery store. This contest is going on all month, and it's an easy way for you or anyone else in your community to get involved with census outside of worrying about anything like COVID-19 or being otherwise stuck inside. You have a lot more time to create some funny materials to remind your neighbors to complete the census. Additionally, the city of Baltimore did recently purchase a phone bank software, which we will be working with our community groups, our community grantees, because we also were able to grant 30 neighborhood organizations, grassroots organizations or businesses, and of course with our complete count committee, so that we can have personalized phone messages going out to anyone in the city. Of course, we're going to be targeting our areas of the city that are not responding as well as others, but we want to let you know that you might be getting a phone call from, who knows, it could even be the mayor giving you a ring asking you if you've completed the census or if you need to get any help. Finally, there are new resources on the census webpage. We have a lot of social media toolkits and whatnot, and I'm actually going to share my screen here and show everyone exactly what I'm talking about on our new website, and I think that will be the easiest way to go from there. So here we go. So right now, this is the updated City of Baltimore Census website. You can go directly to the Census Bureau just from this link here. However, we do have our contest information immediately posted, and there's a lot of social media content through this link. When you click on it, it opens up a department Google Drive, and from here, we have certain things like templated memes that you can just post on your own Instagram page or Twitter or something. We have videos, and we have lots of language that you can use, either just as a personal person who wants to spread the word, or if you want it set up so that you also have a small group or organization that wants to get involved with the census. Finally, we have information about when the Census Bureau will come to your door, because as was mentioned earlier, while the Census Bureau is working to make sure that there is complete safety with all of their employees, as well as you and your household, there is still the in-person follow-up. So we have helpful information as to what will a Census Bureau employee look like when they come to your door, when you can expect that, et cetera. Finally, we have information on really what's at stake. I think everyone's done a really good job at summing up, the representation, the programs that are affected, but right here are the actual list of the 48 programs that the city of Baltimore receives state or federal funding for that are related to the census or related to our census counts. And these programs, I'm sure, even if you personally do not use them, there is someone in your neighborhood, in your family, in your community that does use one or many of these programs. And it's important that, as mentioned before, we get that complete count so that these programs can see the fullest funding that they are required to see. Finally, we do have our own interactive maps and applications for the census. Right now, we just have our map that shows you the areas of the city that we are working with, that we are looking to make sure that they receive adequate resources and information about Census 2020. They are the neighborhoods in yellow. And from the dashboard that came up earlier that shows live response, we'll actually be updating this map next week so that by neighborhood and by council district, you can see how your community is responding. So if maybe Cross Keys is the #1 neighborhood, or if Barclay, which is my neighborhood, is the #1 neighborhood, who knows? We'll be able to find out next week once we that census tract data into our neighborhoods and our city's council districts. That's all I have right now, and I'm going to stop sharing pertaining to our activities, our updates, and everything the city's been working on related to this process. However, Mike, if there's any follow-up or anything else, please, by all means.
Yeah, Austin, thank you so much for that. Really helpful information and a great compliment to what Terry and his team presented earlier. Now, I just want to say I'm on the committee myself. I've been attending those weekly meetings, and I just want to. Everyone needs to know how much work is going into these meetings. I mean, 50 to 100 people on the calls every week, representing agencies and organizations all over the city who are really just doing yeoman's work to make sure that that Baltimore is going to be ahead of the curve in terms of getting that census count up. I guess the thing I'd like to ask Austin is, I'm sure that there's some specific challenges relating to the fact that we're in this kind of lockdown situation, probably things that you were hoping to do that had to be canceled or retooled in some way. Can you just talk about that for a minute, about how the situation that we're all dealing with has affected your work as the manager of this campaign?
Yeah, well, it's quite unfortunate that there is the moratorium on public events and obviously this much greater public health pandemic. But we did have a fully fledged plan to have numerous outreach events in our neighborhoods that we anticipated would not be as likely to respond or might have difficulty responding. Part of it was the acquisition of over a dozen tablets that the Complete Count Committee was going to be able to use so that they could have their neighborhood events and things have additional resources. Additionally, like I mentioned, we did partner with around 30 community groups, organizations, businesses, et cetera, throughout the city to subgrant them money, $150,000 state grant. And I decided to pass as much of those dollars through to small grassroots communities that were not eligible to apply for that grant. And that work actually is just getting started as the city did begin mailing out those subgrantee checks. And all of this work was centered completely around kind of real-time bringing resources and materials to people in community, as that's what the basis of our entire plan was. That said, we have decided to switch gears and we are switching to a lot more online content. We are looking to partner with organizations that are doing food distribution as well, so that we can include helpful census information and resources in food boxes or in meal kits, et cetera. And then finally, as I mentioned before, the Department of Planning did acquire a phone bank software so that we can begin to reach out to people directly and ensure that they are filling out, getting counted, or that their neighbors getting counted. I should add that the Department of Planning, outside of my role and what I've worked on, has numerous comprehensive planners who have various districts of the city, and they work with all of the community leaders in those neighborhoods. And one of the first things that we did as a agency on Census Day, or in the days leading up to Census Day, which was April 1, was have all of our comprehensive planners reach out to those community leaders, those neighborhood association presidents, et cetera, and remind them to spread the word, to call around, and to let people know. Because the other major facet of our plan was to work from trusted messengers. I have said this a lot, but no matter how young and cool and hip I am, many people don't trust me because I work for the government. And more importantly, I don't have that ever needed Baltimore City accent. So when I go to public meetings, people immediately can tell that I am not from here. So what we have done is we have partnered with many grassroots organizations, and we have provided the scripts, the language, the information, the media to share, so long as it's coming from that familiar voice, that trusted voice, or that person that you know and trust and get your information from.
Austin, thanks a lot for that. Really appreciate your being here today with us. And in the interest of time and the fact that we are running late, I'm going to move the program along now. I'll just pause for a moment and say, for people who may be joining the stream late, that my name is Mike Cross Barnett. I work for Strong City Baltimore as the coordinator for communications and special projects. And this is Strong City's mini institute. We've been celebrating what we call Civic Engagement Week this week as kind of a substitute for our annual Neighborhood Institute, which we usually do in the spring, and of course we're not able to do. I want to apologize for the fact that we had technical glitches at the beginning of this program, and I want to thank the folks at Baltimore Votes, who we weren't able to live stream this program on Strong City's Facebook page, but Baltimore Votes is actually streaming it for us on their Facebook page, and I believe we put my colleagues have put a link to that on Strong City's page, so that folks going to our site can reach the stream that Baltimore Votes is helping us out with. So again, thanks a lot to everyone who's shown up for this. I want to move things along with our next presenter, and that's David Troy. Hi, David. So David is a name that number of you probably know. He's been in Baltimore a long time. He's a tech entrepreneur and kind of a data guru, someone who's done a lot of work with kind of big sets of information, and is going to have some interesting things to share with us about his thoughts on things that we need to look out for in terms of the way information can be manipulated online, unfortunately, through social media. And Dave's also one of the founders of the Baltimore City Voters Facebook page. So Dave, it's your show. Welcome and take it away.
Cool. Well, thank you for having me here, Michael, and hello to all of you, both here on the Zoom call and watching on Facebook. So what I wanted to talk today about kind of specifically was disinformation and misinformation. And I will go ahead and share a presentation that I have here that's quite short. Let's see here. You should be able to see that now. So, you know, popularly, you've heard this referred to as fake news. This is what the president says all the time about everything that he doesn't like. So we try to use a little bit more precise term than fake news. We actually talk about misinformation, which is information that is false or incorrect, but was created without the intent of harming someone. So misinformation, you know, that is created without the intention of causing harm, but can in fact cause harm. Disinformation is information, sorry, disinformation is information that is created with the intention of causing harm. And this is some of the stuff that we've seen coming from other countries like, Russia, sometimes China, Iran, putting things into our bloodstream here. Like if you remember the Blacktivist stuff that was happening in 2015, 2016, that would be considered disinformation. So oftentimes what happens with a crisis is that there will be kind of like this big unveiling of the crisis where it kind of moves faster than anybody's ability to react to it. And we're sort of in that phase right now with the virus where we're still kind of dealing with all of the implications and the changes that have been wrought by it. But oftentimes what happens immediately after a crisis is that there's a second wave of kind of disinformation that comes in that can be as destructive as the crisis itself. And oftentimes these things sort of accompany each other. So one of the things that we've seen here in Baltimore in particular, but not unique to Baltimore, is this idea that about a month ago and a little bit before, there was a rumor that was floating around that said that Black people could not get coronavirus. This caused a lot of people to be fairly cavalier about their attitudes about this. They didn't think necessarily that the social distancing measures were necessary or that they, and this seems to have been disinformation that was originated originally in Africa, and it's not clear entirely why this rumor got started, but it sort of started there and then took, because the internet knows no walls and no boundaries, this rumor sort of spread around the world and landed right here in our neighborhoods in Baltimore, where this rumor is remarkably persistent. And even today, you hear people saying that they're not susceptible to this and that it's fine for them to be standing on the corners and going to house parties and stuff like that. So there's been a real public health messaging crisis around getting people to understand that no, what may have maybe started as kind of a joke amongst people has turned into like a full-blown rumor that is just plain unfounded by science. And in fact, we've seen folks in Baltimore, Louisiana, are the people that are dying of coronavirus are predominantly African American. So it's a really dangerous kind of rumor, and it's I think a poignant example of how information can be really toxic and harmful to people. So I have a slide here that shows just a sample of some of the kind of nonsense that's been connected with us around the world. There's rumors going around that 5G is related to coronavirus, and you even have prominent actors and people like Woody Harrelson and John Cusack espousing stuff like this, and it is flat out nonsense. And we live in a world where people are they feel betrayed sometimes by government and by media and whatnot. So there's a really strong predisposition sometimes to believe these things that sort of come across their social media feeds. And sometimes there's stuff like medical information that comes across that seems kind of credible, and so people tend to share it. But oftentimes it'll be like 5 things that are sort of true combined with like 3 things that aren't true, and those 3 things that aren't true are either deadly or a waste of time. And those things also undermine people's confidence in science and our ability to handle them. Both disinformation and misinformation is out there, and we should be on the lookout for it because it's really quite harmful. This is particularly hateful, graphics that were being shared around in right-wing message boards, talking about, like if you get COVID, go to your local mosque, go to your local synagogue. I mean, this is just targeting people. And I think some of this stuff is sort of meant as a kind of an inside joke for people that are on the right wing. But we don't necessarily know the origins of this kind of stuff. Some of it may be being made almost in jest, but then it escapes out into the wild and it's hate speech. And, I think we need to be very careful about, how we treat this kind of information out in the wild. And I will move on from it because it is that toxic. The government has been taking some steps to start to control some of these issues. FEMA has a coronavirus rumor control page that they put together. And they have kind of a list of running viruses that are known nationally. And then Maryland has done the same thing. And what I think effort to try to collect up stuff that's affecting our state in particular. I don't know if any of you recall, but Baltimore used to have a rumor control office that ran from, I believe, 1968 or so, probably in connection with the the unrest and rioting back at that time, and then I think was disbanded sometime not that long ago, like in the last maybe 10 years or so. So it makes me kind of wonder if maybe we need a Baltimore City rumor control office back up and running again. And I think that the health department maybe is taking on some of these things at this point. But in terms of public health messaging that's really getting some attention, and I think that is working well, this is from Lori Lightfoot in Chicago, and she's just decided to really embrace humor. And I think that there's a lot of value to this, because this is the kind of stuff that kind of makes the rounds and gets people to pay attention and kind of laugh along with it. So I think there's a lot that we need to learn. We're going to be living with this situation in one form or another for some time. I think there's a certain amount of optimism that we're going to sort of get past this first wave, and then somehow or another we're going to get things back up and running. And I think it's going to be more complicated than that. I'm working on this problem pretty much full time right now, so I'm talking to a lot of scientists and researchers, and kind of the consensus is that we will be able to get some people back out into public life. I won't call it normal, but we will be able to get some people back out into sort of a more normal routine, but it won't be everybody. And so we're going to have, I think, fairly sophisticated public health messaging that can the importance of they're going to have to be put in place, and that's going to involve continued social distancing probably. We're probably going to need to install things like contact tracing apps onto our phones that monitor whether we've been near people that are confirmed positive, and that raises some privacy implications that are being addressed, but they're complicated. And then we're going to need access to blood testing as well as virus testing, live virus testing, to make sure that we can actually monitor where the virus is as we start to lower the overall count in society. So that's pretty much what I have presentation wise. I could obviously go on and on, but that's kind of a starting point for where I think we're at with this with respect to Baltimore and rumors and disinformation.
Great. Well, Dave, thanks a lot for that. Really helpful stuff. And by the way, everyone listening should know that if you go to the Baltimore City Voters page or Dave Troy's Facebook page, you'll find some of the most level-headed and kind of fact and science-driven discourse going on this subject. So, Dave, you're doing great service to the city in that regard, and I thank you for it.
Sure.
So to circle back a moment to the topic of election and census stuff, is there anything that you've seen out there that we need to be on guard against in terms of ways that malign actors are trying to manipulate us into either not voting or not doing the census or to do those things, to think about those things in ways that are not helpful to us as a community?
Yeah, well, we definitely need to be on the alert for any kind of information that might alter behaviors. So looking for stuff that tries to get people to be suspicious or to create divisions between groups, that's kind of like the key tactic that has been used. Is if you can figure out a way to peel off some segment of society and get them to kind of believe one thing and act a certain way together as a group, that's kind of the hallmark of a lot of these operations. What's happening specifically right now is kind of interesting in that we have a very altered landscape heading into the next few months, different from 2016 and different than anything we've ever experienced. So like right now, we have an election scheduled in Maryland that's going to be mail-in for June 2nd. Right now, we have the April 28th special election in the 7th District that's going to be mail-in. I should have that ballot. I have to go find it. But, I'm going to vote that way on April 28th. And then on June 2nd, we're going to vote by mail. it's probably likely that mail-in will be the primary way in which the November election is done as well. We may not absolutely need to do it that way, but part of the sort of return to public phase of this is going to be, there isn't going to be any real reason to ask people to go be around other people unless they absolutely have to be. So we will probably be doing, the November election by mail as well. And so what I expect is that we will probably see a big disinformation campaign coming from both the Republicans and from overseas, whether that's business too. They will probably be saying like that mail-in voting is insecure, and they're trying to undermine the confidence in the election. And probably there will be a lot of noisy chatter around, like, oh, well, we should just do it online. And there's a lot of reasons why technically you can't do it online, because that's worse than doing it by mail. And in fact, mail is probably better than what we're doing now. So, but the other thing to look for is that a lot of people theorize that mail-in voting is going to favor Democrats over Republicans because of who's going to turn out. It's going to increase turnout for Democrats probably. So the Republicans are going to try to fight that as a result. And there's also going to be threats probably on the US postal system because, it's suffering greatly right now due to reduced revenues. So there's some thought that it may run out of cash in June. And so there's going to be a lot of talk about defunding the post office and about how awful mail-in voting is. So those are just some things to look for the next few months.
Great. Appreciate that. I should probably just mention that, of course, at Strong City, we're a nonpartisan, non-political organization, but that doesn't mean that we can't discuss the facts that are presented to us in the news. And as Dave pointed out, there are clearly messages coming out from different sides of the political spectrum that are different in terms of the safety and appropriateness of mail-in voting, which to my knowledge, despite what some people may have heard or have said, has very little history of any kind of fraud or tampering or anything like that.
Yeah, if you look at the studies on it, mail-in voting in particular, there was one incident that somebody was able to find in, like North Carolina, where somebody rounded up a bunch of ballots and then, voted with them. But it was a totally nominal number of ballots and not material to the outcomes in any way. And in general, the states that have adopted mail-in voting, which include Washington and Oregon at a minimum, they're detectable.
Great. Well, again, thanks a lot for that, Dave. I appreciate it. And unless anyone else on the call has a specific question for Dave Troy, and we will be hearing a lot more about voting, by the way, from Tasmin with Baltimore Votes towards the end of this program. But if anyone has any additional questions, speak now, forever hold your peace. And if not, I'll move the program along to our next guest. So thanks a lot again, Dave. Feel free to stick around. And I'd like to introduce Eean Cadunas. Ariana, I pronounced your name correctly. So Ariana is a Baltimore City resident, Madison Park neighborhood. She is the founder of something called the Utah Place Play Days, which she's going to tell us something about. And I really wanted to have Ariana be part of this program because she was going to do a great presentation for us at Neighborhood Institute, which unfortunately had to be postponed. But I invited her on here because she is someone who's thinking and acting about kind of what we can do to still be a community and to still be a society of people who care during a time when we can't actually be in rooms with each other, has been inspiring and motivating to me, and I think hopefully to a lot of other people. So welcome, Ariana. Tell us a little bit about what you've been up to.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I'll give just a little bit of context for how the play days began, and then I'll explain how that infrastructure that I've built is being applied to this COVID-19 time that we're all in. So I'll bring up my presentation shortly, but first I just want to start by describing how it all started. Last August 2019, I decided that I wanted to get to know more of my neighbors, and I wanted to utilize a park around the corner for me that I could tell was not very activated, but it had very good bones. There were great trees with shade, there were benches, there were tables, there were little mounds that kids could run up on. So in a previous life, I was a community organizer, so I have a sense of how you relay a message and get folks to show up to something. So I created flyers, I handed them out, I emailed them out to those I knew, I stuck them in people's slots, and I hung them around my neighborhood. And every time that I spoke to someone, I would talk to people. I would say, we're going to have lemonade and sidewalk chalking and face paint, and I want you to think about what you want to get your face painted as. And this was really, it's kind of like when you're doing Get Out the Vote and you call people to remind them about their plan for getting to their polling location. Every kid who told me what they wanted their face painted as showed up and said, okay, I want to be a unicorn, I want to be a zebra. It was really sweet. And so we had about 40 people at the first gathering last August. In September, we had 60 people. In October, we collaborated with the No Boundaries Coalition, and Ashiah and Eean and others co-hosted this event with us, and we had well over 100 of their Blueprint for Baltimore surveys. So right there, there's the co-benefits of getting people together for doing something simple like drinking lemonade and getting their faces painted, but also having much more of a civic bend to it. So we've had events every month up until March due to everything that is going on. And now I've been recalibrating. I've got an email list of 160 people that I'm utilizing to get out some mutual aid related messages, to encourage to maintain the beauty of our public spaces. And there's been a lot that's been getting done, of course, that I have not encouraged. It's just been happening by nature of people seeking connection. So the presentation I've compiled is a compilation of things that I've observed and some things that I've helped to generate in my surrounding community that relate to play as well as our response to COVID. So I am now going to share my screen, or do you give me that ability, Michael? How does
I think you have it.
I have it, okay.
You have it automatically.
Okay, so can you all see that? Can you see that? Oh, did you see it?
Not happening, so maybe I do need to make you a host here. Hold on.
Okay. Or if anyone else has already successfully done this wants to.
Okay, you're co-host now.
Okay. All right. So this is one chalking that we did in the neighborhood just to relay the message that you are loved. And I've broken this up into different elements of what play is useful for in this time. So play is useful for a sense of direction, and symbolically I have featured here a compass that some of us at a social distance decorated in the neighborhood. We had noticed it was on the median on Utah Place and decided to draw more attention to it. But it's symbolic in the sense that while we are not allowed to convene in person in large or really any clusters of people, we've started coordinating. So every week, folks are focusing on a different area in the surrounding kind of overlapping neighborhoods of Madison Park and Bolton Hill to focus on beautification projects. So this past week, we all said we would focus on helping to maintain the median that runs along Utah Place. So this is one such example of that. This is the fountain on Utah Place that recently got weeded out and got some new plantings in there. And just behind this fountain, this is the location of where the park play days happen, when it's warm enough to have them outside and when we can be together. This is the Pedestal Gardens community along Utah Place between Utah and Madison, is a place where a lot of the residents from there do come to these playdays, including many of the kids, and that's located right next to the park location. So we did a little chalking for them. Here's just another view of the median looking pristine. Here's another project that a couple of us did at a distance this week. There was a lot of trash on Wilson, specifically between Utah and Madison. So we decided that 3 of us at a distance would really get it cleared away. And we filled, I think, like 6 bags of trash and a few other big boxes of broken glass and bottles. And so here's a little before and after. And I sent that out to my email list along with a few other items this morning, just encouraging folks to share projects that they've been doing in their own time and space as well, just so that we can still feel that we have a sense of connection. And at a time when resources are down across the city, when we're running on a skeleton crew of staff to collect waste and hygiene is a big concern, these are things that we still can do safely as individuals or as groups of people who live together. So another one is play in and around your home. So these are some things I've done myself. Some of these I've just observed around my surroundings. This is someone's home. This is something that I did outside of my house on the left side. Just figured here's a little bit of play that kids who are walking by can do in their free time without interacting, touching anyone. It's just doing a little hopscotch. The geometric chalking on the right is something I observed, and I really liked this do a silly dance. So whenever I pass that house, I make sure to do so. Here's just a picture of some landscaping, and then I saw a daffodil chalking, so I captured that as well. And just sharing out these images, with the community and reminding people that we're all still seeking connection. There are ways that we can spark joy. I find sidewalk chalk to be a very useful tool in that way. Another project that I'm involved with in my free time is a group that's called Sketching the District. It's an urban sketching group. And while we usually meet in person, at this time, we have a sketch at home challenge going. So here's another way that people can seek connection while using creativity, doing things that spark joy without having to be together in person. Play to keep hope alive. This is a message that I walked by and saw a little girl was doing all of these. There were some happy Easter messages and other things, but the big message of brighter days I thought was a very nice reminder. And this is actually outside of a big senior housing complex. And I think there was some intention in doing so, and our senior population is being especially isolated for their own safety at this time. Play while addressing essential needs. So, the elephant in the room here is people are losing their jobs left and right, and people don't have enough to eat, people don't have access to healthcare or the appropriate testing. So play can seem a bit indulgent, but it is this email list that I've grown that has opened up a lot of connections and bridges that I've been able to help facilitate between organizations that do good work, people who want to help do good work. And so this was one example. Housing community in our neighborhood was getting food delivered to it by a great business called Food for My City. They brought a huge truckload of organic fresh produce, and this was right at the beginning of when things were happening. So well before the stay-at-home rule, before people were really battening down the hatches, we were very cautious as well, but just showing this is not something that probably would happen today in this way, given how much stricter things have gotten. But we had a few volunteers who handed out produce to these residents, with gloves and everything on. So just another reminder. And when I've been sending out emails, I've done 2 to my about 160 person email list since everything started with COVID. I include some reminders about joyful, happy things that are happening, but then also I list off resources that are available. So whether it's the asset map that was created to show all the places to get food and access to healthcare if you're uninsured, to information about food pickup options and things like that. So Play for Democracy's sake and for Strong City Baltimore about utilizing sidewalk chalk as a vehicle, not only for spreading joyful messages, but also for informing folks about the changes that have been made to our upcoming election. So given what a main drag this is at Druid Hill Park among the cherry blossoms, I decided to do this chalking there to let folks know that the primary had been changed to June 2nd. And with that, that is all, and I'd be happy to take any questions if you have them.
Great, thank you. Thanks a lot for that, Ariana. Really inspiring presentation. You know, one thing we've seen, I think, in response to the emergency is, you know, there's been a lot of kind of spontaneous development of this mutual aid type response, where neighborhoods are really like doing things, you know, for themselves. A lot of self-help and care going on. And what I love about what's going on and in your neck of the woods there is the way you're combining, you know, things that meet what we think of as necessities, you know, people need food, things like that, but also remembering that people still need, you know, kids still need to play. People need a sense of, you know, kind of hope and some joy and some beauty in their lives as well, which you're able to, you know, to bring as an artist to this. I guess tell us a little bit, just for a moment, about how you see working in to this work that you're doing, an aspect of engagement with, you know, our democratic process. I know you did a nice little drawing on the ground on the path in Druid Hill Park with where those beautiful cherry trees are.
Yeah, so, and the inspiration for even doing that little drawing came from being part of one of the Baltimore Votes coordinating calls a few weeks ago, where we were breaking into brainstorming groups to talk about people to vote. If people are not familiar with vote by mail, how best to do that. And so one of the suggestions that I had shared was this idea of using sidewalk chalk to get the message out, and that it's something that children can do as well as older individuals, anyone really. And also at the time it was unclear whether and to what extent polling locations would still be open, and how to help assure people that they would be able to vote in person in a safe way if that was what they wanted to do. So we also in that session talked about using sidewalk chalk to demarcate 6-foot blocks so that when people are waiting in line, they could be spaced out. But if you did that coming from a polling location, it would also be reminding or informing people of where the actual polling locations that are still open and nearby to them are, which I think is especially helpful for older individuals who might not have access to internet and so forth. Yeah, in addition to, you know, the democratic process in the sense of elections, I think what having to recalibrate in this particular way has also accomplished in my kind of community and sphere of influence. I'm the community outreach chair for the Midtown and also there's NECI on the Midtown Benefits District, which is an organization that provides supplemental waste collection, greening, and other services for a set number of neighborhoods in Baltimore. And they, for one, are you know, running on a skeleton crew along with many other entities right now. And so in our most recent board call, we were talking about strategies for, you know, kind of how do you safely, you don't want to tell people to go out and be out and about in groups of people, certainly not, but even this cleaning up effort, showing the before and after pictures, that was something I had suggested as a way we could create some kind of healthy competition and culture of structured caring in our built environment. And I know we're nearly at time, but the last thing I'll say is I'm a regional transportation planner, so I think a lot about the connection between the built environment and kind of ways that we can build more civic ownership over our institutions. So future of the public realm and how we interact with public spaces in this kind of post-COVID time.
Great. That's really wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And I want everyone to, I'm just going to share this for a moment so everyone can see this lovely message that Ariana created along the cherry tree path there in Druid Hill Park. So again, thanks a lot for that and for everything that you do. And yeah, if people want to set up something like that in their own neighborhood, what do you suggest? What's the first step for, it can seem kind of overwhelming to to start something out of whole cloth. What's a first step for creating something like that?
Sure. And not to be too self-promoting, but if you Google my name and the word play or ball. When I was originally going to do a workshop around that at the Neighborhood Institute, it was kind of going to be going deeply into that, and people would come and share their own context of here's the neighborhood I'm in, and I was going to walk people through, those steps. So just very quickly, the first thing you should really do is think about the space that you're going to utilize. So one of the first things I did was I went to our neighborhood association meeting, and really I became the outreach chair after I'd done so many of these play days and people realized how many connections I was creating. So at that time I wasn't very involved, but I said, I want to make sure there are no liability issues around using this physical space. So I got the approval from the neighborhood that this is a public space, you can use it. And then from there, I thought about who to reach and how to make it a really simple. We were going, the activity and kind of the offerings would be things that people can all get behind. So really lemonade, pretzels, clementines, face paint, and sidewalk chalk. Those were the things that I got. Those were the things that pretty much everyone of every age and background was able to, joyfully appreciate. And especially because it was in the summer and we had some older folks there as well, having the trees and the seating, so having some shade and some ability to sit, those all made it for a very intergenerational, comfortable gathering. So the big thing I think is, other than that, is just thinking about how to do your outreach. And I think flyers go a long way when you're kind of kicking something off from the ground up and then tapping into institutions you have, like the Madison Park email list is now something that also kind of spreads the word about the things that I do.
Great. Well, again, thank you very much for that and for making the time to share your experience and knowledge with us today. Very much appreciated. So thanks, Ariana. So we are going to finish up today's program with someone who's been waiting to speak for a long time. That's Tasmin Swanson from Baltimore Votes. Tasmin is the behind-the-scenes hero of the day today for helping us figure out a way to get this event online when it wasn't originally working out, and kindly letting us kind of piggyback a ride on Baltimore Votes Facebook page, and which allowed us to kind of save the day here. So Tasmin is going to talk to us about some of the things that Baltimore Votes has been doing. This group, if you don't know about them, you will soon. You should. Incredibly active in recent weeks in trying to keep Baltimore communities informed about a very fast changing situation regarding how our elections are going to be conducted, both for the April 28th general election in the 7th Congressional District, but then also as well for the June 2nd primary election. So without any further ado, Tasmin, take it away. Tell us who you are and what you've been up to.
Thank you so much. So hi, I'm Tasmin. As Mike said, I'm joining from Baltimore Votes, and I'm actually really excited to get to speak after Ariana because she was, as she said, in our first brainstorming community session where we were trying to figure out how we could pivot and address voters' needs during the April 28th and June 2nd vote by mail election. And she was so wonderful in coming up with like such creative, fun ideas, the same things that she talked about. And that really helped to inspire some of the tips that I'm going to share today. So it's nice to be able to come full circle for that. So I sent over a presentation. I'm on my phone, so I can't share my screen right now. Mike, are you able to share that screen? And I'll follow along.
A moment here. Let me pull that up for you.
So just as context, I'm going to share two things. One, I'm going to share a little bit of information about Baltimore Votes and voting by mail. And then I'll also share 5 tips that individuals can do at home right now to celebrate democracy from your couch is what we're going with. So our first thing that I want to share is the Baltimore Votes mission. We want, next slide please, we want to make sure that every voter in every precinct votes in every election. So that's a pretty simple, rapidly because of the spread of COVID-19, that goal becomes a little bit harder. So I'm going to start and just give some background on voting by mail and what it's going to look like here in Baltimore on April 28th, and then dive into what you can do at home. So vote by mail is actually already pretty common, next slide please, in the US. 33 states, including Maryland, already allow any eligible voter to request an absentee ballot and or vote by mail without needing to provide a reason. Government studies, bipartisan experts agree that this process is secure, it's inclusive, and it results in accurate elections when it is implemented well. So as one of the earlier speakers talked about, there are some mixed messages coming out from people of different parties right now, but historically academic literature from both Republican and Democratic experts do agree that it's a good process. So you can see already on that next slide in the graph that the number of people who are voting in person on election day has been decreasing steadily over the last 30 years. And the number of people who are already either voting by mail, that green line, or voting in person early is rising. So it does show that people are changing the way that they vote. That's been going on for 30 years already. So this is part of a trend. It's not something new. Next slide. There are some clear benefits of voting by mail. It's actually very secure. There's a record of every single vote in case there's a recount that's needed. And there are very few instances of fraud. In Oregon, they have been voting by mail exclusively since 2000. That means over 100 million ballots. in the past 20 years and only about 12 cases of fraud. It also means that voters have time to really sit with their ballots and do their research from the comfort of their own home. So it means that voters tend to be more educated about their choices and about the candidates that they are electing. And it has some benefits for people who have low rates of literacy, people who are like perhaps not voting in their first language and need, a family member to help them translate. They're able to do that and take their time instead of feeling rushed like in a ballot box. So I'm going to go into the next slide and tell you a little bit about voting by mail on April 28th. So next slide. This has a lot of dates on here, but the key things are that already ballots have been mailed out to some voters. So anyone who had previously requested an absentee ballot should have their ballot already. And then on April 13th, so next week, the second round of ballots are going to get mailed out to everyone else. So if you haven't done it already, go ahead and go on to elections.maryland.gov and update your address, because that is the address that things are going to be sent to. On April 16th, so again, very shortly, the Board of Elections is going to begin opening and scanning ballots. It will be live streamed and observed by representatives from both parties, but the results will not be announced. This is just because they estimate it will take 3 weeks for all of the ballots to be counted. So they're getting started early so that we don't have to wait until the end of May to find out the results. On April 21st, that's the last day that you can request a ballot be mailed to you if you update your address or register late. And then on April 24th, you can still that's the deadline to register to vote, but you can only receive the ballot by email. If it is emailed to you though, you still need to print it out and return it. And then April 28th is the actual election day, and that's the day where ballots must be postmarked if you're returning them by mail. So next slide. This is information about getting your ballot. The deadline to register is April 24th. You can have it either emailed or mailed to you, but if you have them mailed, they're going to be sent to your address that's listed with your voter registration. This is really important because ballots cannot be forwarded. That would make the ballot invalid. So go online, update your address on this website, and make sure that it's coming to where you live now. And then on the next slide, we have some information about returning your ballot. So you need to double check that you've signed your ballot. This is a really common mistake that people forget to sign and then their ballot doesn't count. And once you've signed it, you seal it, and then you stick it back in the post. So ballots must be returned by mail, even if you had the ballot delivered by email. Ballots that have been mailed to you will have a return envelope with prepaid postage, but if you had yours delivered electronically, you will need to get your own stamp. Really important, there are no in-person voting options for the April 28th special election. There are some rumors going around that there might be, and the answer is absolutely no. This is going to lead to some problems, especially for voters who have accessibility needs or don't have permanent addresses. And in the June 2nd election, they're going to take a couple measures to correct that. But on April 28th, there's no in-person voting. So next slide. In late March, when we first found out that elections were going to be changing, Baltimore Votes held 2 community brainstorming sessions to generate ideas for how we can all cultivate an inclusive and celebratory culture around voting, even during these unprecedented times. These were honestly so much fun. I loved these events. It was a chance for members of our community to come together, talk about, what COVID-19 means to them, how it's changing their daily lives, and for us to make sure that we were still thinking in a positive way, thinking about all the ways that we could be creative and fun and continue getting this election done right, making sure that every voter in every precinct votes in every election, continue working towards our mission. So out of these meetings, out of these brainstorming sessions, we came up with a ton of ideas for what people can do to get out the vote. Some of them are things that Baltimore Votes as an organization is going to continue doing. So we are now holding weekly webinars. We're working with different organizations to help build their capacity to spread news. But then some of the ideas generated are for what individual people can do from the comfort of their own homes. And so those are the ideas that I'm going to share with you right now. So the first one is probably what you're already doing. Stay informed locally. Focus on local news, not national news all of the time. When we're looking at, I know I personally get really overwhelmed when I'm looking at the Washington Post and the New York Times and seeing information about what's happening in New York and California and Wisconsin. And if I'm only looking at national sites, then I miss out on the stuff that's really relevant to us here in Baltimore. So following local news sites like Baltimore Sun, Maryland Matters, or WYPR helps make sure you get the latest announcement from Governor Hogan and everything affecting our elections. Also, all of the organizations that have presented today have active social media presences, and we are posting information about elections and about the census. And following us, not to be too self-promoting, but this is a great way to make sure that you know the local news. So our second tip on the next slide is get your neighbors involved. So just like Ariana was talking about, our neighborhoods, even if we can't interact with them all the time, we're still part of a community, we're still part of a neighborhood. So something you can do is to start an informal phone bank. Pick up your phone, call 5 people, and update them about the elections. Tell them how they're changing, and ask them if they need help or have any questions. And then once you're done chatting with them, challenge them to call 5 more people. And then challenge those 5 people to then call 5 of their own. And so if we continue that and spread out and spread out and spread out, pretty soon the entire neighborhood, or hopefully the entire city, will be covered. If getting on the, that's a to put in your neighborhood, and you've got help with. Tip number 3 slide is about going virtual. Get together your friends for a virtual dinner party and ask them questions about the election, or maybe even invite a local candidate. You could also host a Vote by Mail 101 webinar for your community. And if you would like some help setting that up, you can give me a quick email, tasmin@baltimorevotes.org, and I can share all of the PowerPoints that we've used so far that give you information nationally, locally, and tips for how to continue encouraging your community to vote. And our next tip, number 4, on the next slide, is to help vulnerable individuals. This is especially important because things are changing rapidly, and people who are not connected digitally, they might not know all of the changes that are taking place. So what we can really do to support one another is updating each other, calling folks that you know who might need an extra hand or who might not know what's going on. Take that on yourself. Assume that people don't know. It doesn't hurt to ask. So remind people to update their address. That's super important. You can also offer to take someone's ballot to the mailbox as long as it is signed and sealed. And if you know someone who maybe needs to mark their ballot electronically, if perhaps they have low vision and they don't have access to a printer, but you do, you could let them know that you have a printer and could help out. So if you do help someone, it's absolutely fine, it's absolutely legal in Maryland, but you do need to fill out a voter assistance form or just sign on the appropriate spot on the ballot. And then the last tip is my personal favorite and relates to the last presentation. It's about getting crafty. So you can make a sign and hang it in your window that supports your favorite candidate or encourages other people to vote. You could write a song or a short movie or a story about the elections, share it on social media. And if you don't want to share it on social media, share it privately to friends. It'll still encourage other people to think about the elections and just have fun. There was a study done recently, a couple years ago, forget where, that found that, making crafts, even if you suck at them, helps to relieve stress. And this is definitely a moment where we could all use a little bit of stress relief. So on the next slide, you can see my wonderful example. My roommate and I woke up early this morning. We made a pie, and on the top, we decorated and cut out vote on April 28th. And if you hit the next arrow, you'll see our final result. You can't really see the vote anymore, but we had fun making it. We're going to share the posts on social media, and we're going to really enjoy eating it. That's the most important part, I think. So if you do this as well, make sure you tag Baltimore Votes, share your creations, and we're really looking forward to seeing how folks get crafty and creative. And finally, on the next slide, I've got some more information about Baltimore Votes. This website, baltimorevotes.org/election2020. We are updating that with all of the relevant links that you need. We also have a helpline that we've set up that you can call in and ask questions about, like, I haven't received my ballot, what do I do? And we can walk you through the steps on the elections.maryland.gov website. And every week from now until the June 2nd election, we're going to be holding Vote by Mail 101 webinars. Join us, ask questions, and we're having a host of other organizations, like Ashiah Parker from No Boundaries Coalition has spoken on the webinar before, and a host of other organizations. Last week we had Disabilities Rights Maryland, the National Federation of the Blind, and the Mayor's Commission on Disabilities join us to talk about accessible options for voting. So we're doing what we can to answer specific questions or specific populations' needs. So thank you so much. That was a lot of information that I just threw at you. If you have more questions, just let me know at any point by email or Facebook.
Tasmin, thanks a lot for that super useful and informative presentation. I think the takeaway from all of that is that voting is as American as apple pie, I think.
Yes.
And so that's great. And I want to thank you also for shouting out the local news options that we have here in Baltimore. As a former almost 25-year newspaper journalist and who spent 9 years at the Baltimore Sun, I really want to reinforce that, a lot of people will say the Baltimore Sun isn't, everything it used to be, but there's people there are doing great work every day. Fortunately, we still do have some, people on the ground in Baltimore who are dedicated to, accurate reporting and good information. It's actually a tough time for local journalists as it is for everyone else because, I've heard from some of my former colleagues at the Sun. Of course, their advertising revenue is down, so they're coping with less. So any way that we can support them, because in the end, if we're talking about civic engagement and kind of building civic power, which is what this is all about, impossible to do in a democracy without without good information and reliable journalism. So appreciate that. And speaking of news and the Baltimore Sun, I think we did have, if I'm not mistaken, a piece of actual news in the last day or so, because I believe Governor Hogan announced he was accepting the recommendations of the State Board of Elections regarding June 2nd. Tasmin, would you mind sharing with the group just for a minute, kind of what the most important things that we need to know about how that June 2nd election is going to be conducted?
Yeah, so the June 2nd election, just like the April 28th election, is going to be mostly vote by mail. The one exception is that there are going to be very, very, very limited in-person options on election day itself on June 2nd. So every jurisdiction will have at least one, but up to 4 early voting centers that during the early voting period, you can go and drop off your ballot. You can't vote in person, but you can drop off your ballot. And then on election day, those 1 to 4 voting centers in every jurisdiction will be open for in-person voting. So they're really encouraging that you only go and vote in person if you really need to. So that would be people who don't have a permanent mailing address, people who need to use the assisted ballot marking devices, or folks who want to do same-day registration. Otherwise, they're encouraging you to vote by mail. That's the biggest change between them. The voter registration deadline, I don't know off the top of my head, but that'll be sometime in May. So you've still got a little bit more time to register for that.
Can you explain, because I think it's a little, it's not necessarily straightforward, but we have a voter registration deadline, but we also have same-day voting. So how do those two things work together?
Yeah, so for April 28th, that doesn't matter because without any in-person voting options, you can't do same-day registration. For other elections like the June 2nd election, typically the voter registration deadline is 3 weeks before the election day. And that's if you want to register in advance. And then we have on the day of the election itself, you can go in and register in person. And I think, I'm not 100% sure about this. I don't know exactly what the rationale behind that is. I think someone from, like Joanne from Common Cause would be a great person to speak to answer that question in more detail. But I think you might fill out a provisional ballot. I don't want to say that for sure. So I am not sure. I'll do some research and I'll get back to you on that one.
Well, there's like, as we've seen, there's a lot of moving parts, and we, this is, thanks to the work you guys are doing, we're all going to be better educated about this stuff in the end.
Yeah, I feel like I'm learning a lot day by day. Voting was very new to me. I didn't know all that much about elections before I started this work, and have been learning so much every day because of this, especially because of the crisis that's going on.
Yeah. Well, what you guys are doing is incredible, and I can't thank you enough for it. So we're about half an hour after we said we would end. So in respect of everyone's time, I am going to try to wrap things up. If anyone has on the call has a question for Tasmin at this point before we call it a day, I guess you can jump in now if you'd like. No? Just want to really thank everyone for being here, taking part of your day to do this, and kind of learn and share with each other. This is an attempt to keep the spirit of Neighborhood Institute going. We all had hoped that on March 28th, there'd be like 300 or 400 of us over at Baltimore City Community College with dozens of different workshops and all kinds of presentations. And that was the goal. We still hope to do that someday. For now, it's wonderful that we have the ability to do things like this. The tech can be glitchy at times, as we discovered trying to get started today, but we managed to overcome that thanks to Tasmin and my colleague Eva, who also was working behind the scenes, kind of getting this done. So I just want to kind of conclude today by giving a shout out to some of the folks who have been supporting our work. I'm gonna try to call this up on my screen here for a moment. Where are we? Sorry, give me just a moment here, folks. No, that's not it either. I want to thank some of the sponsors of the work we've been doing at Strong City Baltimore, who are helping us make the Neighborhood Institute happen, because it is going to happen eventually. We clearly could not do this work without our partners. Our sponsors have stuck with us despite our big annual event being postponed, and we're very grateful for their flexibility. We don't know exactly what the future is going to bring in terms of COVID-19, but if you are in a position where you can support any of these wonderful organizations, we hope that you do. Just to give a shout out to Falk & Hands Hardware, LifeBridge Health Center, Baltimore City Department of Housing and Community Development, the University of Maryland Graduate Program in Social Entrepreneurship, Loyola University Maryland, T. Rowe Price Foundation, and the Baltimore Community Foundation. I want to give a special shout out to our friends at Open Society Institute Baltimore, who not only are sponsors of Neighborhood Institute and Civic Engagement Week, but they're also a key thought partner in shaping this year's event around this theme that we've been talking about of building civic power. I was going to show you a slide. No, I can't find it. Oops. There we go. Turn that off. So yeah, again, just want to thank everyone for being part of this. You know, I think we had great conversation today about some really, really important issues. And, you know, Civic Engagement Week is now officially over for Strong City Baltimore, but obviously we all have so much more work to do. And, you know, all of you are you know, folks who are kind of leading the way for some of the rest of us and showing like what can be accomplished, and both individually and collectively. So thank you very much for that. And everyone be safe out there, be well, and you know, keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks, Michael. This was wonderful. I know it was a lot of work for you, so thanks for making it happen.
Thank you, Ariana. Take care.
I just ended the live video.
Oh, okay. Let me switch off the recording here.